been a week since we've had the Next Best Bet Jake Higgins with Brett Levy, episode 162 here. We're going to talk about some Monday baseball a little bit later, also talk about some college football. We just had most of week one wrap up, but there is some Monday action on Labor Day. Also, the NFL's right around the corner. Brett, it's been an interesting week, though. I mean, the Mets made some Twitter news with the thumbs down to the crowd. And then we also had a full slate of football on Saturday that everybody seemed to be celebrating, right?
Yeah, I mean, a wild week for Mets baseball. We had a GM put on a leave there for a DWI Higgins. So just crazy always in Mets land. College football kickoff was great. Our Syracuse Orange take care of business on the road. Beat
Woo.
those big bad Bobcats of Ohio, Higgins. Can you believe we were dogs for that one? I can't believe we were dogs. The disrespect.
Started off as dogs. By Saturday, though, I did see Syracuse at -1.5. That was still very disrespectful to me. I was surprised that game was even on national television, though, to be honest. Let's take a look at how we actually bet in the last episode real quick, though, Brett, because we didn't. Neither of us took Syracuse in the last episode, but my college football did do well. I went 3-0 in my college football picks in the last one, but only 1-2 in my MLB picks, including losing my pick of the pod. But Brett, I still keep a half game lead on you because you also lost your pick of the pod.
Yeah, exactly. I think my pick of the pod was Northwestern, to be honest, Higgins. But we have it down as the New York Yankee Atlanta game. So yeah, it was not my greatest week in college football either. But you know what? I had a lot of fun watching Higgins. I learned a little bit. This is not Northwestern of last year. And at least I had one bet come through. The under in UNC Vatek, I saw that in the 60s, Higgins. I'm like, they might not even break 50, and I don't even think they broke 50. So I think that was a pretty good read on that one.
We'll get into the college football a little bit later in this show. Maybe there's been some overreactions. Maybe we've learned a lot about some teams, or maybe there's still a lot to find out about some of these teams. It was just some week one misnomers. Going into Beginners Boulevard, though, Brett, we're going to talk about the drift and this drift, kind of like you're drifting in a car. It just kind of starts sliding one way, it keeps sliding on down. We're talking about where the line is. It might start at a +200, but as the day goes on, getting closer to the game or closer to the event, you see that line start to slide to maybe a +205, maybe a +210, maybe a +220 by game time.
Yeah, I had not heard this term before, Higgins, so new information for me. And, you just see that line drift farther and farther away. It makes sense.
It does, and it's just a common term that we want to just bring up that someone might casually bring up, and if you're unfamiliar with it, maybe question it, and so that just helps give a little bit of clarity. Going into our baseball on Monday, though, Brett, we talked about the Mets a little bit here. And I do feel a little bit guilty, Brett, because I did hop in the rundown first, so I'm going to be the one that's betting on this Mets Nationals game. And I'm taking the Mets at a juicy -115. I really like those odds right now on Sunday night for Monday's game. It's an early start, 1 p.m. local time game, 10 a.m. start for me. You're going to have Trevor Williams on the mound for the Mets facing off against Patrick Corbin. And personally, I've made a lot of money betting against Patrick Corbin, at least earlier on in the year, especially I did. He is 7 for 14 on the year, not winning a lot of his games. Trevor Williams, not necessarily the most confident or most gratifying arm on the mound that gives you the most confidence, but I'm going to back these Mets bats that seem to have woken back up a little bit on the East Coast, especially against a Washington team that's at the bottom of the NL East. Their season's done, but the Mets may still be trying to fight for something, but they need these early September wins, right, Brett?
Yeah, Mets definitely need to be winning these games. Patrick Corbin's had a really bad year for the Nationals. And they're still paying him a lot of money. No Strasburg for the Nationals. They obviously traded away Scherzer. So this is not the year they anticipated in Washington. Higgins. It's all been bad. Mets blew him out on Sunday. So I am a little nervous that, maybe Washington has some fight left, just some pride. But yeah, I would definitely be on the Mets side in this one. But I can't bet it because our pillars, Higgins, and I need the Mets to win these games for my mental health. So no way I'm no way I'm jinxing the Mets like that.
No way you're breaking those pillars, but I'm just going to let you be a fan for Monday. You don't have to risk your money and maybe be doubled down. And the Mets, though, on the series against the Washington Nationals this year, Brett, they're 11-7, and this is the final time these two teams are playing each other in the regular season. I think the Mets are going to steal it. They're going to get the win and take this final series 2-1.
Yeah, I'll be honest, Higgins. I wouldn't even really read too deep into the series matchup all year because a lot of those games were played with completely different teams. Scherzer, DeGrom, Trey Turner was on the field.
Hmm.
No Javi Baez as well. So just really different looking baseball teams right now at this point in the season. But another team that's competing in the NL East, Higgins, the Philadelphia Phillies. And they have a Cy Young candidate in Zach Wheeler. He's on the mound tomorrow against Brandon Woodruff. Woodruff's been great for Milwaukee, Higgins, but he hasn't been Cy Young good. That's Corbin Burns. And Philadelphia plus 140 with their best pitcher on the season. Some people would say Aaron Nola might be their best pitcher. Not this year. It's Zach Wheeler. Plus 140, that's too big of a line, Higgins. This is not one I'm beyond confident about or anything like that, but Philadelphia in this game should be no bigger than plus 110 dogs, I think. So the plus 140, that's too much. That's like 30 cents too much, in my opinion. So I'm going to hop all over that and root against my Mets a little bit, I guess.
I I get your thought process there. I believe a little bit more in Brandon Woodruff. He has eased back since the All-Star break, since the trade deadline. Hasn't been that Cy Young potential pitcher that he was in the first half of the season. But Brandon Woodruff still has been very good for the Brewers. And I think that the minus 150, minus 140 that you're seeing at the money line currently on Sunday night, depending on the book, that's about right for me. So I'm actually including the Brewers in a money line parlay, Brett. I'm doing a three-leg parlay. I'm backing Woodruff with the Brewers against the Phillies. I'm backing the Red Sox, who has Chris Sale on the mound, 3-0, has been great since really returning and having his short season with the Red Sox this year. He's always wearing that daddy long neck cutoff. I don't know if you've seen that under his jersey, but he's wearing a hilarious print shirt, and it's been giving him some luck. He's 3-0, including one of those games against the Rays. Meanwhile, Ryan Yarbrough has not had fantastic success against the Red Sox this year. He's 1-2. And then the last game that I'm going to be picking is the Giants against the Colorado Rockies. They're going to be in Colorado, but the Giants have Kevin Gossman on the mound, and he has been lights out. 12-5 record so far for the San Francisco Giants with Kevin Gausman. I think he's going to get that one. Combining all three of those together, I get a plus 325 parlay around there, depending on what books you're looking at and what odds you get for each of those three.
Yeah, well, Higgins, I just really want to point something out quickly, just so to bring it to your knowledge too, right? But more so for our listeners. Um, you beat me to the rundown today, so we're using the Oregon lines here, and I'm obviously a very fortunate person where I have a good buddy in Oregon who's not betting on the Philadelphia Phillies, so he can probably place that bet for me. But in New Jersey, Higgins, Philadelphia plus 125 right now, so essentially half. Like so
Yeah.
I found some value and I took it. Basically, an example of line shopping, Higgins. I found a book that, clearly doesn't value the Phillies the same way the state of New Jersey does. And maybe that part of that's our proximity to Philadelphia. You have to weigh a little bit of that, but some of that might just be a bad line.
Absolutely. Or maybe the line is trending towards the way that you were saying, and maybe you are just taking a sharp line at this because who knows where it's going to be at on Monday morning when we wake up. Baseball looking interesting though as we're coming down this September stretch, Brett. We have some other games that are going to be of interest. I'm not looking at them right now. I may be looking at them later on Monday night though. Games like the Seattle Mariners against the Houston Astros, or maybe even the Dodgers Cardinals. I like both those games, so those are both going to be on my radar, I think. But I like the picks that we've given out so far. I think that's what we're going to stick with for podcast picks for the MLB. Let's jump into our money line magic, Brett. And we had a full weekend of college football games, so there were probably a few picks that we could have made with this. But what do you say about someone that's a 19-point dog coming back in the late stretches and getting a money line win? It's the definition of a money line magic, not to play spoiler, but that's why we're going to talk about some Northern Illinois Huskies against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets.
I mean, that was the game everyone had circled. Higgins, Northern Illinois, Georgia Tech. Everyone watched this one. We were glued to our TVs. No, I'm sure people tuned on Miami, Alabama, and then all of a sudden they saw this score and had to find it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Northern Illinois, they were 19-point underdogs, but they were the first ones to score. They went into halftime with a 14-7 lead, but then Georgia Tech scored two touchdowns in the fourth quarter, making it 21-14. And Northern Illinois making a late drive. Rocky Lombardi, the quarterback for the Huskies, completes a 3-yard pass for the touchdown, and then it is a 21-20 game. And as the coach said after the game, Brett, easy decision, no hesitation, going for two.
Yeah, go for two, go for the win. Higgins, your 19-point dogs are on the road. You're not trying to play for overtime here. You're trying to take this thing and get out of there with the dub. So I definitely understand the play call from Northern Illinois' sideline.
So once again, they go with the pass play. Rocky Lombardi completes the pass again. 38 seconds left in the game, and the Huskies take a 22-21 lead over the Yellow Jackets. They hold on to win. A 19-point underdog gets the money line magic victory in the closing seconds. This is the definition of money line magic.
This is Moneyline Magic. Higgins, Northern Illinois, 0-6 last year. Gets game one at Georgia Tech. Takes the dub, Higgins. And not only that, they did it with a transfer quarterback, Rocky Lombardi. I don't know if he famously played at Michigan State, but he played there. Kind of okay, but clearly one of his better games here to upset Georgia Tech and lead his team to victory late. Huge completions down the stretch in this one, Higgins.
I don't know how you wouldn't already have confidence in your quarterback with a name like Rocky Lombardi, but if you didn't have confidence before week one, hopefully he sold you with that victory. That's a moneyline magic. Shout out to Rocky Lombardi, the Northern Illinois Huskies. Before we jump into our college football, though, because we're going to talk about Monday night's game, today's episode is brought to you by DB. DB is a Scandinavian brand that makes backpacks and bags to help people on the move stay ready for anything. From the streets to the peaks, DB's gear is travel tested by some of the world's best athletes, adventurers, and creators. Over the past decade, DB has designed and developed, released, and refined the best bags in the world. With DB's patented hookup system, you are able to attach smaller products to your backpack, roller, or tote. I can't stress enough how important it is to find the right luggage for every travel scenario. We are teaming up with DB to exclusively offer our listeners 10% off your next purchase by using the code POD10, that's POD10, or going to the link in our show description. DB, it's time to move on, time to get going. Brett, college football on Labor Day weekend. And when the NFL isn't starting week one this weekend, that means college football had Saturday, they had Sunday. They have Monday. And on Monday, we have an SEC ACC matchup between Ole Miss and Louisville. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, Higgins, Labor Day weekend's always fun in college football. FSU always hosts that Sunday night game, and the Monday night game is usually a good one. This time we've got Ole Miss Louisville, like you said. No Lane Kiffin, which caught my attention on Saturday, Higgins. I was trying to beat the books, get the Louisville line, whatever it was. Louisville still plus 10.5. I like Malik Cunningham. I like Louisville's coach. He was at App State last year. Not the best year at Louisville, but I think year two, a full off season, they'll improve. So Louisville plus 10.5 with Ole Miss missing their coach Higgins. I like that a lot. The minus 115 doesn't really scare me off because at the end of the day, what's the difference between winning 9-10 and like 860? Not much. So, we'll take it, Higgins. So, maybe I'll bet 2 units on it because it's a standalone game and I'm only betting one baseball game. And this will definitely have my attention on Monday night. Malik Cunningham, Matt Corral. This one's going to be high scoring, a lot of fun, some dual threat quarterback play. And I haven't said a word about either of these defenses. I don't know a thing about either of these defenses. This game screams offense to me.
Well, I'll talk about the defenses in a second, Brett, but I like your reasoning and your pick because if Lane Kiffin were there for the game, I probably would be on Ole Miss with Matt Corral, who is someone that if you look at odds for potential number one pick in the NFL draft next year, he's one of those names in the top 7-ish area. But to the defenses, to the point you were making with that, Brett, neither of these defenses were very good last year. In fact, I took a look at this over under, which is set at 53.5, and I'm hammering this over. Absolutely hammering this over. Because you look at a team like the Louisville Cardinals, who last year played 11 games. 7 of these games, there was at least this over getting hit, and there was multiple times that there was a team scoring 40 points. Hint, it wasn't Louisville. And then you look at Ole Miss. They had 6 of their 10 games where not only this over would have hit, but one of the teams scored 40 points. Hint, it wasn't Ole Miss. So I'm expecting without Lane Kiffin being there that there's going to be some potential big play errors that Louisville might be able to capitalize on, get some quick points. I also expect Ole Miss with Matt Corral and their high-profile quarterback to come out all guns flowing and getting maybe a lot of more pick in the play calls than he would have if Lane Kiffin was there. Maybe he's going to take a few more risky shots without his head coach being on the sidelines. It could be interesting. I really like this. I really like this over at 53.5. I see 60 plus points being scored personally.
Yeah, I think the over is definitely going to come into play. I guess I'm more concerned from an Ole Miss standpoint of Lane Kiffin not being there to call the offensive plays. I don't know how great of a defensive play caller
Yeah.
he is, right? He came up on the offensive side of the ball. They Ole Miss, especially last year, was very explosive on the offensive side of the ball. So I think they might lose a little bit from that perspective, but I think you're right, Higgins. I mean, I like both these quarterbacks. They're exciting. They know how to put up points. They're experienced. So I look for a little bit of a bounce back for Cunningham at Louisville. Down year last year, much better his sophomore season the year before. And then Corral looked pretty good last year, and I hope he can build on it year two in the same offense. So lots of excitement for Monday night's game, Higgins.
Well, you're right. There's plenty of mystery with Lane Kiffin being out because of COVID, and Ole Miss is playing their cards a little close to their chest. They have not revealed who's going to take over the head coaching duties or who's going to be up in the booth. And So it's going to be interesting how that dynamic works. Does the defensive coordinator have to take the head coaching duties? How would that impact him with his defense if he has to be a little bit more focused on the offense? It just all plays into it. I think it's going to mean that I could see a 42-28 game. I could see a 49-35 game. I don't see a lot of defense. I see a lot of offense in this. Like you were talking about with these quarterbacks, I think there's a lot of potential for some explosive plays. And Matt Corral, Brett, there's a line in Oregon right now. If you wanted to bet that he would be the number one pick in the 2022 NFL draft, he is one of three quarterbacks that's listed at plus 1,000, along with Brock Purdy and JT Daniels. There are six quarterbacks listed in the top seven. So, Brett, I got to ask, is a quarterback most likely going to get drafted number one next year? The top two in terms of odds are Spencer Rattler and Sam Howell, and neither of them had a good weekend.
Yeah, tough weekend for those two. But yeah, quarterback's going number one, Higgins. It's the nature of the league, the nature of the position. I guess, people will argue Kayvon Thibodeau, the defensive end from Oregon. Although, again, you want to talk about tough week ones, ankle injury in the second quarter for Mr. Thibodeau. So, uh,
Still had two tackles, a sack, a tackle for a loss, and a forced fumble though.
okay, well, go draft an injured player at number one overall, Higgins.
Very true. Point out the negative. I'm just pointing out the positive from his week one performance.
No,
That
go ahead, take the injured guy.
even though his day was short, he was still amazingly impactful.
Yeah, no one doubts the talent. But yeah, and he missed 2.5 quarters with an ankle injury. I'm not taking away the sack. I'm seeing the sack.
Well, Brett, I think it's time we jump into the league where the football players are getting paid. I mean, college football players, they're getting paid for their NIL now, but let's talk about some salaries, some contracts, some NFL players, because the season starts on Thursday, and I think this could be our last chance to really dive into some NFL futures. We could do that on Wednesday, but Brett, we're going to have a big weekend of college football, NFL lines to talk about. So I think we might as well just talk about that right here. I'm looking at some win totals personally. Is that something that interests you ever with NFL bets? Something that I'm dabbling with this year. I've dabbled with once or twice in the past, but I found three lines that I really, really was able to talk myself into.
I think win totals are fun. I think if I feel really strongly about a team, so for instance, this year, it was Seattle for me, right? I felt like the market was way too high on the Rams, maybe a little bit bullish on the 49ers, who, again, led the league in injuries last year, but it wasn't like they set the world on fire when they were healthy either. So, tough to say. But again, when healthy, they were in the Super Bowl, so people think, oh, they'll have better injury luck this year. You're not going to lead the league in injuries 2 years in a row. They're going to bounce back. Well, I think Seattle probably improves a little bit as well this year. They struggled with injuries, and I bet them for the division. I think the NFC East, if you have a very strong feel on that, you could bet the division. There are some conferences and divisions, Higgins, that you're not going to want to bet, like the NFC West. I'm guessing the Chiefs are very heavy favorite, or excuse me,
The
the
AFC
AFC
West.
West. Excuse me.
Well, because you brought up the NFC West as one
Yeah.
that's something that's competitive to talk about, and I'd agree. Being in Oregon, I think that presents me a unique opportunity because I got the Seahawks to the north of me. I have the 49ers to the south of me, so the fan mixture in Oregon can be pretty interesting. Maybe even have some Rams fans potentially because of LA. But if you're looking at it, Seattle, the line's at 10.5 wins. The Rams, it's at 10.5 wins. The 49ers, it's at 10 wins.
Right.
The Cardinals, it's at 8.5 wins. And that line's at plus 100. So if you've listened to this podcast the past few episodes over the coming months, you've heard me be bullish on the Arizona Cardinals for this year. I really like what they have for their offense this year. I think J.J. Watt on one side and Chandler Jones on the other. Yes, they may be both old men, but I think combined they'll be able to do plenty of pressure with their all pro moves that they each have. It's going to be very hard to pass protect against those guys. I like the Cardinals in at 8.5 wins at plus 100. I really love it because I took a look at their schedule, Brett, and I could see potentially 11 wins, and it only includes them having to win one game against the Rams, one game against the 49ers, and one game against the Seahawks, which they get two opportunities against each of those teams. So it's not super heavily reliant on their division schedule. They have a easy enough schedule around them. Otherwise, I think getting to 8.5 shouldn't be hard for this Cardinals team.
Yeah, I think 8.5's a good number. I'm not very bullish on the Cardinals. With all due respect to Cliff Kingsbury, I thought it was a weird hire when it was made. Right, like he
Mm-hmm.
jumped up after being fired from Texas Tech. He didn't leave Texas, like he was fired, and he was the offensive coordinator at USC, and then he gets the head coaching job at the Arizona Cardinals without coaching a down for the Trojans. I don't think it's really worked out. I don't know if I'm a believer in whatever his air raid system is. Kyler Murray has looked like an MVP and, an unbelievable player his rookie year through the first 8 weeks. And the second 8 weeks, not so good. So, is that system or is that player or is that, injury? I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
Higgins, but I've seen it now twice. And I think Kyler is special. I think DeAndre Hopkins is special. I think to your point, we love Chan Jones, go Cuse. Buda Baker, great player in the secondary there. JJ Watt as well, you mentioned. So they have plenty of talent, Higgin. I'm not buying into the whole picture there, but 8.5 wins when you lay out the schedule and you see Jacksonville, you see Houston, you see Detroit on there, you start thinking, it's kind of possible.
Especially with a 17th game being added, I think this year also is a tremendous opportunity to take some looks at some win totals because it may be tough to predict some of these lines with that extra game being there, with that extra opportunity of a non division game. Some of these schedules will give some of these teams an easy extra win. Some might be a surprising extra win. It's interesting. Like, I have two other teams that I'm looking at, and one of them I'm looking at an under. The Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East, Brett, under 9 games at minus 120. And that's because I took a look at their schedule, and it would take them having to win all 6 of their division games, in my opinion, to eclipse that 9 and get to 10 wins. So I don't see them being able to eke out and squeeze out all 6 of those wins. I think there's going to be at least 2 losses in there. One definitely to Washington, I think, who is going to probably win that NFC East. And then you never know with the Eagles and the Giants. You never know with the weather that happens in the Northeast for some of those games later in the season. It's it's very interesting. I'm taking the under 9 for the Cowboys, but then there's another line that's set at 9 wins that I'm taking the over on, and that is the New Orleans Saints, and that's for a similar reason to my pick with the Cardinals. There, a lot of those wins don't necessarily have to just rely on the division. I have the Saints potentially getting up to 11 wins, and that's with about 3 to 4 wins in their division. I didn't give them either of their victories against Tampa Bay because I don't expect them to win either of them. I think it could be a fight that maybe they could get, but I'm not going to give either of those in a prediction of what wins do I see the Saints getting in this year. I see those being 50-50 toss-ups, 45-55 toss-ups favoring Tampa Bay maybe. So maybe 11 wins when the over-under set at 9. There's a possibility of that being a push as well. So I'm taking the over 9 at plus 100 for the Saints. So I found 3 win totals that I like, and I might be looking a little bit more, and I might have another one for Wednesday.
Yeah, fair enough, Higgins. I guess just to give my 2 cents, not that I'm betting these right, but I would probably take the other side on the Saints bet. I not a huge believer in how this offseason went for the New Orleans Saints. You know, Jameis was okay the last time he was a starting quarterback. Team went 500. Obviously, threw 30 interceptions, not great, but threw for over, 4,000, 5,000 yards and 30 TDs as well. So there's talent with Jameis, but then you look at the Saints skill position players. Okay, Alvin Kamara, stud, absolutely. Michael Thomas on the IR right now. So then you're looking for who's their next wide receiver. Marquez Callaway had a great preseason, but I mean, we really haven't seen him since Tennessee. Since he was playing at Tennessee, that's the
Yes.
college, not for the Titans. And Traquan Smith, we've been I mean, those that play fantasy football have been waiting for Traquan Smith for 5 years now. Higgins, Deontay Harris is suspended for the first 2 games. So, I mean, you start looking for a playmaker. Adam Troutman, their starting tight end, is hurt week 1. So it's getting bleak and bleak and bleak, and I'm just not buying the Saints. But to your point, Higgins, I think there is something to be said about Sean Payton. And I think, maybe we get good Jameis. Maybe you don't get all the bad Jameis. There's some that say when you play in Bruce Arians' system, right? The no risk it, no biscuit type of thing. So I don't know. Maybe he'll be a little more risk averse. I would fade the Saints, but that's just me. I'm a more cautious better. You're much more aggressive. You love some of these aggressive plays.
Hey, that's fair. I was able to reason out potentially 11 wins for the Saints. I think they're going to destroy the Giants when they play them. I counted that as one of the wins personally. I think it's very interesting. It'll be a very interesting season for the Saints. A lot could go right or a lot could go wrong. There's a lot of potential, but there's a lot of question there. Brett, I also took a look at the coach of the year, and I decided to put 1.5 units down on Bill Belichick at plus 1,200 to win coach of the year. And my reason being is I don't think it's going to take too much from Belichick and the Patriots for him to be able to considerably bounce back, and I'll put that in air quotes, and for him to get recognition. Bill Belichick's back. He's obviously wins coach of the year. They did so badly last year. Now they got Mac Jones. He has his quarterback. They're back. Bill Belichick, this is his 4th time being the coach of the year. He ties Don Shula. Of course. I see it happening. I see it happening. And I will say this straight up. I am someone that last year at the very end of the season made a bet against a buddy of mine that's a Patriots fan. I don't think the Patriots are going to make the playoffs. I made a bet saying that back in January. I still don't think that. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to win the AFC East. Maybe the Patriots get a wild card. But Belichick, if they can go 9-8, they go 10-7. I think he wins Coach of the Year.
I think they need to make the playoffs to win Coach of the Year. So it's a good hedge by you, Higgins. It's a good hedge, but no, I think he's a decent name to circle for sure. It was a bad year last year, starting the first rookie week 1 ever for Bill Belichick. So definitely going outside the box for him. I think, you put out some other names. I don't see Arthur Smith winning it. I don't see Vic Fangio winning it. I'd be shocked if Urban Meyer was successful this year. Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco is an interesting one because of the injury problems last year. So
Yep.
theoretically, if you're the number 1 most injured team in football a year ago, you're probably not going to be the number 1 most injured team in football the next year, which leaves plenty of opportunity for the Niners to theoretically bounce back as a healthier unit. Hopefully, George Kittle plays more games. I guess 49er fans are rooting for Trey Lance, but you'd like to see Garoppolo out there healthy. The team does pretty well when he's their starting quarterback overall. So, that's an interesting one. And Brian Flores in Miami is an interesting one that you laid out there, Higgins, because Miami and New England are really fighting for that kind of quote unquote wild card spot. I think you're right. I think it's
Yeah.
Buffalo's division. They're the class of the AFC East right now, which is crazy to think about. But Miami, and New England are both interesting rosters. You can poke some holes, but then they've got some deep spots as well. New England seems like they're going to want to run the ball. Seems like Jacoby Myers could be a potential number one wideout in New England. Could just fill the Welker Amendola, heavy target underneath role as well. We'll see what happens with Mac Jones and him, but that's a guy I'm looking to explode a little bit. But meanwhile, in Miami, I love their wide receivers. You have Will Fuller, although suspended week one, Devontae Parker, and rookie Jalen Waddle, who caught passes from Tua in college. I think that's a great trio right there. And, the Jets put nothing around Sam Darnold. The Dolphins are definitely putting some talent around Tua Tagovailoa. You have some questions about the O line, but that's okay. They have some real weapons there, Higgins.
I think you and I are on a very similar wavelength with this because I crossed out a lot of the same names you did there with Meyer, Smith, Fangio. Shanahan's a very intriguing name to me as well. That's a name that I think you could lay alongside Bill Belichick. Those two both, I think, have high opportunities. Brian Flores, you outlined a lot of reasons that a lot of people like Miami. I think Miles Gaskin is one of the sleepers in fantasy football for a lot of those leagues. He's getting a lot of talk now, so his draft is starting to bump up a little higher, though. That who knows? Brandon Staley, the coach at the top of the list, though, the Chargers coach at plus 1,000. I don't know if I'm backing that because, Brett, historically, there's something that we know with NFL quarterbacks, and it's a sophomore slump, especially when they got so much praise the year before. We saw it with Cam, we saw it with Kyler Murray, we saw it with Baker, we saw it with a lot of quarterbacks. The list goes on. So that puts a moment of hesitation for me on that Chargers team necessarily for a coach of the year prospect. Also, they performed so well last year and shocked so many people. What would it take for them to do this year for his name to be brought up in that conversation? Do they just have to do the same thing again? Or do they have to exceed those expectations? That's why I'm looking at Brandon Staley. I don't necessarily like that value atop the list at plus 1,000.
I think all it would take, Higgins, for him to win would be for the Chargers to win one 4:30 kickoff on that final drive in the fourth quarter instead of throwing an interception. Maybe
That's a great
that's
point.
all it takes. Like, I mean, how many times have we watched Philip Rivers? I know Philip Rivers was the quarterback there for forever, but I mean, it feels like I have 20 years worth of memories. The 4:30 game, we're down to the final drive. The Chargers are driving and interception.
Yep, that is a classic Chargers trait. Absolutely. It was a trait with Rivers, it was a trait before Rivers, and it's probably going to be a trait potentially after Rivers unless Justin Herbert can break it. But Brett, let's look a little closer than the Chargers playing, which is going to be on Sunday. We got a game on Thursday, and I'm actually making a quick pick in this because I think there might be some line movement as more attention starts actually focusing on this game with it happening on Thursday. The line's been at 7.5 pretty much for the past month. It's sat at 7.5. I've seen it. I'm gonna take Tampa Bay at minus 7.5 because we have seen Dallas throughout the preseason, and they held Dak Prescott really out of all of it and did not let out a lot of information. It seems like there might be worries in terms of even how close to 100% he is by week one. I'm not confident in that. There's not a lot of assurances in that unknown for me of a quarterback coming back from as bad of an injury as he had in this situation and a Dallas Cowboys defense that was as bad as they were last year. Especially when you look at a Bucks team that yes, they won the Super Bowl and there's going to be that potential hangover as we all know. But minus 7.5 for a team that brings back all 22 of their starters from last year, has tremendous assets. Tom Brady at their quarterback again. I think the Bucks are going to win by double digits. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if that line gets closer to 8 or 8.5 by the time of our next episode on Wednesday night. So I'm taking it now. I'm just going to be safe and take the 7.5 now. Wouldn't be surprised, or sorry, I'm actually going to take it at -7. I forgot that. I'm taking it at -7 at -125. I bought the down to the -7 just because I think it's going to keep going up to that 8, and -125 is not too big of juice for me to take.
There you go, Higgins. I like the. Oh wait, I forgot.
I forgot to put the caveat in that I took an alternate line. I was talking
Yeah,
about the
for
7.5. I
sure.
don't mind the 7.5, but I forgot that I went and bought down to 7 before it moves to 8.
All good. Yeah, it's definitely moving in that direction. The juice in New Jersey -115 on the -7.5. So might be safe for you to get in early. I'll probably find myself on our next pod taking that game some way, shape, or form, Higgins, because it's opening night, and you have to have a little action on opening night in the NFL. But let's get to our Levy Lock pick of the pod. You continue to whoop my ass, so go ahead, go first.
I'm just half a game ahead. We both lost last episode's one, so we're going to get back on the right train here. And Brett, that's why I'm backing your Mets. I'm taking Trevor Williams on the mound with the Mets facing off against Patrick Corbin and the Nationals. Corbin has not been great all year long. He's 7-14 on the year. The Mets, they are 2-1 so far in this 4-game series. This is the final game of their season series. The Mets lead that season series 11-7. They're going to make it 12-7 and win that final game. I'm calling it. Taking money line at -115.
Well, I always root for you anyway, Higgins. Sometimes I root against your pick of the pod because I like to win in our little competition here. But I have to root for that one. My Mets need that game.
Yes, they
You can
do.
find me on the Monday Night Football game, Higgins. Louisville Ole Miss. No, no Lane Kiffin, excuse me, for Ole Miss. So I was looking to take Louisville as soon as I saw the news. The line pops back up. It's still a double-digit spread. I get it. Ole Miss, the SEC team, Matt Corral, borderline Heisman contender. I don't know. He's in the top 10 for sure. So I guess you can call him a Heisman contender. It's still very early in the season. We'll see what happens. But Matt Corral, very exciting player to watch. I think Malik Cunningham, the Louisville quarterback, bounces back a little bit after a down season last year. Coach comes from App State, helped build up the App State program, Higgins. We've seen a lot of good players and a lot of good App State teams over the last few years there. So I expect the trend to continue at Louisville. We've seen a few App State coaches go. This one's at Louisville. Drinkwitz is at Missouri as well. So it seems like good coaches come out of there, good players. I'm all in. So give me Louisville plus 10.5, mainly because Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin.
I'm excited for the game. I'm excited for a lot of points in that game, if you can remember. I'm taking that over in that one. I think there's going to be at least 60 in that game. Should be a fun one. We got some college football on Monday night, Labor Day weekend, baby. Y'all got the day off on Monday. Hopefully you listened to this entire episode. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Maybe share it with a friend. This has been episode 162 of The Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you again on Thursday.